Good afternoon, everybody. I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive Corporation. Joined here alongside me in his lab coat with a stethoscope and magnifying glass is Pete Greco, our VP of Sales and Technology. Today, we're going to talk about why good networks are leaking data. If you have been to our events in the past, thank you very much. If this is your first time, you know how we do it. We like to talk about the content at hand and make it real and relevant. So to that end, we will meet Productive Corporation in 1 minute or less. Then I will turn the microphone over to Mr. Value Add, Pete Greco, and he will talk about good networks and where there still may be issues. So if you have a question, please utilize the chat feature. Also today, we are going to be giving all attendees on this web event the chance to utilize our technical services and have someone take a look and do a call with you free of charge to chat a little bit about your network and security posture. No obligation, but just a conversation. So I will ask you at some point here if you are interested, and if you are, raise your hand or shoot me a note, or you can shoot me a note now, and I will make note of that to have someone contact you. But for now, let's meet Productive Corporation. Well, who is Productive Corp? Well, I am so glad that you asked. Productive is a security solution provider for mid-size companies. We have specialized expertise, subject matter experts. We can help you with technology as well as licensing questions. We implement, test, and optimize the things that we do. Everything from security assessments, Office 365 security, Active Directory, security services, to configuration assistance and UTM implementation. We also produce third-party content at productivecorp.com/content, as well as our YouTube channel, content for you to get you educated on products and security that's happening in the mid-market. The bottom line is we have resources to help you. Whether it's implementation, assessment, licensing, or optimization services, we are here to help. Help at productivecorp.com. And one of the ways that we help is by putting on things like our Knowledge Series. It's something you asked about. Hey, you guys work with thousands of customers. What are you seeing? And this is really a collection of the stuff that we've seen, observed in real time. We've removed the names and faces to protect the innocent, and we'll talk in general terms. But believe me, we have seen all of this stuff and more when working with our customers. And our goal is not to say, hey, what is going wrong, but hey, how do we make it more right? And the man that's going to help us make it more right, the man with the plan, Mr. Value Add, let's give it up, virtual round of applause for Pete Greco. Pete?
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for hopping on with us today. They did used to call me Mr. VA, but the Veterans Administration had trademarked on that, so we had to go full length Mr. Value Add. So Todd, if I can get a little control on, there we go, on my side. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm moving light speed.
As you do, as you do. So we're going to get right into this bad boy and talk a little bit about why good networks leak data. Right? Lots of issues out there, and really, you know, as you talk to individual clients and peers and even friends kind of in this you know, technical line of work, you just hear so much stuff going on. It really is challenging to get a handle on it. Even in our own small environment, you know, we feel like the work is never done. But we really thought a lot as we were putting this together. And I don't remember when we did this kind of on the first go around. Maybe it was about a year ago, a little while ago. Really thought a lot and have continued to think about this since the first iteration, right? And kind of the top three things that we get from folks, and this isn't every single organization that we talk to by any means, But a lot of folks say, is kind of the first reason of where they think they've already done enough or even have done too much or don't need to do more is because they're already running a firewall and an anti-malware or an endpoint protection program, and those are absolutely crucial to have. And I don't like these conversations that I'm hearing some of these startups trying to have of this eliminates the need for this kind of protection or that kind of protection. I don't see too many protections getting sunset because of something revolutionary. Now, I do see some revolutionary new stuff that helps up your game, but we're not recommending, oh, once you go to this thing or start locking this down, get rid of the firewall. Not the case. We're talking about, even as folks are moving their servers into an Amazon or an Azure, how are we going to enable firewall protection and UTM protection up there? How are we going to get endpoint protection on those cloud servers? We're continuing to talk about extending it. So important to do, but it's for sure not the only thing. The thing that I hear very frequently that really agitates me, because it really makes me feel like if someone is telling us they don't need to do more because they trust their employees, we really have not done our part in helping them understand the threat landscape, right? And so trusting your employees is awesome. We have some really good folks that work at Productive Corporation. We've got some folks who have been on board with us for a really long time. I would trust them with the keys to my car, with the keys to my house. I've given many of them the keys to Todd's house, so they have a place to go when he's at work. Right?
Very convenient for them.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, he's got a nice big television, and I want everybody to enjoy it. Right. And so some of these threats are not trust related. Right. The accounting person getting a spear phishing email targeting unpaid invoices, or my favorite, we owe you money. Help me pay you. Right, that's a very attractive email to get that you might want to open. Them opening that is not a trust issue. It can be an education issue, right? It can be a protection issue that we weren't doing the right stuff to prevent that employee from receiving that email to begin with, and maybe we could have done a little bit more training to help that employee understand the difference between that illegitimate email and a legitimate email of maybe an overdue account saying, hey, we got this invoice, we're not sure how to pay it, or what forms of payment do you take, or whatever it is, right? So it's the total wrong reason to not get serious about upping your game. And it's really the total wrong reason to not be thinking about things like mobile device management and protecting BYOD devices and this kind of stuff. And then the last thing that and I shouldn't say the last thing, the third thing that we get is, well, we're already got a encrypted file share where we ask people to put stuff, not recognizing that data may be able to be stored in a lot of other places. And so we've taken the time to encrypt our storage drive or media drive or whatever catch-all drive we've got, and we've asked everybody to put the data there, and then we really don't come back and validate that that's what's happening and take the steps to seek out data across the network to verify that the data is only going into that spot, and really understand where else is the data going. And that's really a little bit of closing our eyes to the problem. And I'll let you know a little secret. It's happened to us many times. I remember a great webinar where I was talking about how data can get duplicated, and found that one of our drives had been duplicated. And talk about getting jammed up. And Todd was on that with me. Talk about getting jammed up. It was like, oh, wait a minute. I have this in 2 different locations. How did that happen?
Yep.
Right, so it does happen, and it doesn't make you bad. I hope it didn't make me bad, right? But it's the kind of thing that periodically we got to go out and verify and visualize and make sure that we understand what's going on. I think the next thing is not taking the time to really understand, and I actually got this from one of our clients who told me that they had an IT liaison, and they weren't even that huge of a company. I think they had maybe about 300 employees. But they had a technical liaison whose sole mission really was to try and identify how the employees work, what each department really does, what's important to them, so that IT could do a better job of understanding their complaints so that they could solve problems in a more efficient way. Because the end user, your end user, is not always good at defining to you what it is they're actually having an issue with or what they need, because they use terms incorrectly. They don't know how this technology actually works, and we see that firsthand all the time of, why can't I just do that? Because you can't, because it doesn't work that way. What's your goal? And I'll show you how we can do it the way you need to. But let's stop trying to figure out why you can't do it the way you want to do it, and just tell me what you want the end game to be, and I'll help you get there in a way that is more secure and more prudent, and maybe in some cases even quicker. Sometimes it's actually quicker to do it the right way than to do it whatever crazy way they've been trying to do it, right? So get an understanding of how your employee really thinks. You know, for a lot of these folks, they're not thinking about security. They're not thinking about the gateway. They're not thinking about, oh, if I click on this, then you're going to have to come in the weekend and rebuild this server because I got the whole thing ransomed, right? They're just thinking about, I want to access my data any way that I want. I want it to be available. I want to be able to do my job when I'm ready to do it. You know, I'm got a big role. I've got an entry-level role where I'm hoping to grow within in the organization, and all I'm really thinking about is, how do I take my career to the next level, not how do I stay safe. How can I lose my competitive edge if I allow data to get into the hands of my competitors, right, or get into some foreign government or this kind of. They're not thinking about that stuff. They're just thinking about, how am I going to do more? How am I going to do it better? How am I going to get that promotion or that pay raise or this kind of stuff? And part of their way of getting there is having access and the availability to do their job when they want to do it. If you look at HR boards and career boards and these kinds of things, you know, there's a lot of talk out there of, let your folks work where they want. This isn't an IT message that's getting put out there. This is an HR message. This is a millennials message, right? These kinds of things are being developed by people who are not thinking at all about protecting the enterprise, protecting the infrastructure, keeping everything available. That's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, how do I make sure this employee is happy in their job? And the unfortunate part is they're not going to be happy when their computer doesn't work because they've been infected with a ton of malware caused by them, right? So we need to understand, and once we understand, then we can start doing a better job of educating, right, and keeping them moving. For these folks, making multiple copies, right, and that's my little tagline here, I'll delete or move this later. I do this all the time, save something on my desktop so that I've got it handy, or as a reminder that when I get back from lunch or whatever, I need to get this, or maybe it's temporary data that I need to reference while I'm building a presentation or putting together some kind of a chart or some analytics or whatever. And I've gotten very good at coming back and cleaning that stuff and deleting that stuff, more of a way to be able to see, hey, something's on my desktop, it's something I need to respond to, but I see these desktops where there's just, you know, 10,000 files on that thing, and you couldn't find something quickly if you wanted to because they got so much on there, right? That starts getting away from us because people never come back and do that clean out, and they're just thinking, man, I'm so busy, I don't want to delete something on accident, I'm not organized, and that becomes your headache created by them. And some folks just simply don't think that anybody wants to get access to their data. What would be the benefit of someone getting my stuff? It's important to me, but I don't think it's important to anybody else. They don't understand that their data could be critical to somebody, or searching through that data maybe provides them your password file or whatever it might be that helps them get access. So maybe compromising this end user or the shouting man here isn't the most important thing, but it's a start to compromising the whole enterprise, right? And that's a little bit beyond the typical non-IT person's thought process, right? So getting a handle on where the where the data is at, right? Super important. And the real trick is it's everywhere, and it's in more places that we know in a lot of capabilities. And I've talked to tons of folks who are saying, you know, maybe we've put in some DLP type stuff on our email and our web filter, so we can't upload Word docs or this kind of information. But then we're saving it on our laptop, we're taking it home, or we're saving it up to our Office 365. We're taking our laptop home, and then we're able to pull that stuff down or side load it over to a Dropbox or a Box or some other account where now I can get it shared with somebody. And we had a guy not that long ago asking, hey, could you create a Dropbox account? We had a big file that we couldn't email to him. It wasn't that big, but big enough that he couldn't receive it via email, and he wanted us to put it up in Dropbox. And it was pretty innocuous, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But that's the kind of thing where had I not been involved, I would have had no idea what was going on. And if it were a big deal, I might not have been there to stop it, right? And so that's where we want to try and figure out how to really understand where is this data at, what are people doing with it, and making sure that I'm putting policies in place to stop that. And then I'm also doing the education so that employees understand this is why I'm blocking it. It's not fun for me to jab you. This is how we protect the enterprise. And when we do this, you actually are more efficient doing your job, not less efficient, even though this one instance happens to be a little bit of a pain, right? And so one of the trickiest things here is that data proliferation, right? And I've already referenced the example of us having a large file folder getting duplicated, and one of those was highly protected. Luckily, the second one wasn't shared at all, so the other employees couldn't access it, but it is in a location now that I'm not actively protecting, not actively knowing about. And had we not uncovered it, that's a situation where if somebody had compromised the gateway or breached us in some way, might have been able to get access to that, even though they might not have been able to get access to the other file share, right? So we want to know about that stuff. Now, getting control of this data proliferation, and this really wasn't the intent or the theme of today's event, can also save us a little money on our backups. We've had a lot of conversations with customers just in the last 30 days even of folks needing to talk about larger backup capacity, larger units, upgrading appliances, and this kind of stuff, because their data has grown out of control. And what we've been helping folks do is, let's take a look at it. Your backup has gone from 3 terabytes to 10 terabytes. Well, that's awesome. The easiest thing for you to say is, I need a bigger box, and the easiest thing for me to do is say, here's a quote for you. The hard work here is, let's figure out what is all this data. I mean, if it's 10 terabytes that is all required, well, then that's what it is. But is it the same documents over and over again? Do you have that file share that's been duplicated? Are we saving those, and this is the productive example, are we saving all those price books from 2001? They're not coming back into fashion, right? And at this point, there's zero value in understanding what we charge for a product that doesn't even exist anymore in 2001. It's not helpful. Any marketing that we did in 2001, it just, so little of it actually has any bearing on how the world has changed in 16 years. It's not going to be useful. It's fun to look at some of that old stuff and be like, oh man, remember that? Remember when all we ever talked about was antivirus or basic backup or backing up to tape or whatever? Those are interesting things to talk about when we're having beers, but it in no way impacts the way that our business operates today. And for a lot of you folks, that old data doesn't impact the way your business operates, so why are we backing it up every 30 minutes, right? Doesn't make sense. And so understanding where that data is, what it is, figuring out what can we get rid of. My favorite example is the old bank statement. Totally useless to you, very useful to hackers if you still have that bank account. But going back in and seeing what your average daily balance was or what checks cleared in 2004 helps your business not at all. It doesn't help your accounting department do anything. It can provide a template for a hacker to figure out how to compromise your checking account or your accounting department or your finance department or whatever. So that's the kind of stuff that we can improve our storage capacity, improve our backups by getting rid of some of that stuff, have less data that can be used against us or to further a bad actor's efforts to get forward, right? Provides a lot less stuff for employees to have to filter through to be able to do their job or find the information that they need. So how can we get control on that data proliferation? And there's not one answer, and my next slide isn't going to be the one answer that that you've been looking for. This is something that we can help you out, but the help that we provide really has to be a back and forth between you and us so that we can help you figure out what is the right way to go. And so there isn't just a big bullet that I'm going to throw up for you that tells you here's how you solve it, but really how can we work together and let us help you get there, right? So where the mid-market misses it and really have talked to a lot more folks getting serious about data retention over the past, I don't know, 8 months, maybe kind of summertime last year, we really saw an uptick in people kind of hearing this kind of message and saying, yeah, we do have to get rid of old data and actually make sure that it's gone. Let's really make sure that it's eradicated. And so having that policy, having a written policy in place is the first step, and then having the technology to actually help you remove the data, get rid of that old stuff. And we don't help with this kind of stuff, but that extends to even getting into those filing cabinets and getting rid of those files from the, from the 1970s. They're not helping you, right? And getting rid of those filing cabinets actually can save space and save money and free up storage for more relevant content, right? And then how are we protecting data on the move? Whether we're putting it up into the cloud, we're sending it out to clients, we're sending it back and forth between our internal employees. What are we doing to make sure that that stuff is safe? That's a big miss that we see, not just in the mid-market, and a lot of mid-market folks are getting smarter about doing that for sure. And then as we see in kind of the small business size, a lot of data completely exposed, a lot of issues in process or very ready to happen. So pretty easy to miss the mark on protecting that stuff. And then the tough area that a lot of folks are struggling with is BYOD. Folks want to bring in their own laptops or Macs especially. Talk to a lot of IT folks, and I'm in this same boat too. I really don't know much about the Mac. What I do know is it's not as secure as Apple would like you to believe. It's not as secure as what a lot of Mac lovers want to believe that it is. But I don't know all the tricks of hardening it and locking it down and getting visibility on it like I do on a Windows machine, right? And so that's a challenge. And if I don't own the machine and I'm not able to control it the way I control the machines that I own, it puts me at risk if I'm going to let the employee use that machine as their workday device and allow them to do all the things that they need to do their job. I'm now putting my data on a device that I don't necessarily own and control. And that's pretty challenging. And so we're really still trying to figure out which way the market is going on BYOD. We saw a couple years ago people were flourishing to it. I think a lot of finance folks thought, well, this is going to be awesome. We're going to save money on buying hardware. We're going to improve employee happiness by letting them choose their own gear, and this kind of stuff created a lot of headaches for the IT folks who are now saying, well, we need a replacement part here, but we don't know where to get it, or we don't have a line in to get it, or it's taking us too much time to get these parts or work on machines that don't belong to us. What's our responsibility if an employee damages the thing?
Yeah, or it's haphazard, right? They kind of went BYOD, and then but they still have a bunch of stuff they own, so it's the worst of both worlds.
Right. Yeah, and so we have seen some pullback there, and I think folks are really trying to figure out what is that right way to go. But it does make it hard to get control, right? And this is the kind of thing where maybe arguments need to be made on this is how we're going to do it, or really just for the business folks to understand if we go this route, how do we ensure that our data doesn't leave with the employee? or how do we ensure that that employee is responsible, enough with the data so that we're not going to get compromised just because they were careless, not necessarily being malicious, but just because they were careless or just simply don't understand what's going on with technology. So some pretty big hurdles, right? So how do we do it right now, right? Or where are the easy things to get control? Our internal file servers, our structured data. Now that doesn't mean that we see everybody is on top of their SQL servers or that kind of stuff, but that is a common area where we do see folks having a pretty good handle on stuff. Right, is managing that structured data. We're talking to a lot of folks who are already doing it or asking us about database encryption or SQL encryption and this kind of stuff. We're seeing more folks starting to look at the traffic that's going into the switches, so they're getting some understanding and visibility. If you're running a SIM, that's helping you get some additional visibility. As you get into the smaller sector, SIM may not make fiscal sense for everybody, right? Requires some head count, so that can be challenging in a smaller organization. And one of the areas where we're really trying to help folks is, as they're calling us up and saying, hey, we want to talk about SIM, maybe because they've seen a web event or read a paper or talked to somebody at a show, of really helping them understand, are you ready for SIM? Have you done some other things that are maybe a little bit easier for your organization to pull off? Versus putting some big project in where you're not going to have the manpower to run it anyway, and spending the money on a tool that you can't use, you can't afford to use, you don't have the team to use, that's just a waste. And so we really want to try and make sure we're helping you have those smart conversations, and not that we want to keep anybody from technology at all. That's for sure not the case, but let's be responsible, and that's part of our job, is to make sure that we're being responsible and being a good partner to you and making smart recommendations that fit your organization. And that's one of the things I think a lot of our clients are tired of, and that we're tired of, is let's just don't get out there and start talking about all these things as catch-alls and this kind of stuff. That's what the vendors like to do. Our job is to really help you sort through that, figure out what makes the most sense for your organization, and make sure you've got a broad view and really understand there is no one thing that you can buy that kills everything. A lot of organizations have multiple things on their line card that can help protect your enterprise, right? But there isn't any one solution that takes care of everything. So we want to make sure that we're having those conversations in a smart way and really helping you folks understand what are the things that are most appropriate to your specific environments, right? So how do you get some of this stuff going? Part of the challenge here is getting budget approved to do stuff. That's kind of the next thing that we really see with a lot of folks is a lot of our customers really are cutting edge thought-wise and process-wise, and really understanding what needs to happen to get their organization to that next secure level, but don't have the dough to do it, right? And so how do you start going about doing some of that stuff? You can't just ask for the money, right? The 90s made it very difficult for a lot of folks to get some of the tools that they need, because we were just spending so much money acquiring technologies. A lot of stuff was new. Everything was moving so fast that a lot of organizations ended up with some pretty big systems that did not do much for them or didn't deliver on the ROI. And so finance people got a lot sharper about asking tough questions, and some of those finance folks, they didn't necessarily get sharp about asking the tough questions. They just learned to say no to everything, and unless you can put together a rock star argument, just nothing is going to get approved. And that's a way of doing it. I don't think that's a forward-thinking way from the finance department, but we can't control that, and neither can you, right? So what can you control? Compiling the argument, putting the argument together, putting together tight reasons on why what you're proposing really helps the business and keeps you moving forward. And one of the challenges with security is becoming more secure doesn't automatically make you more competitive. It can prevent downtime, which keeps you in business. It can prevent black eyes, right? But much like insurance, we didn't go out and buy our any of the insurances that we have because we thought, oh man, when customers hear that we're on with Travelers or Preferred One or whatever, they're really going to want to do business with us. Now, no, we do it as a protection mechanism. We rarely talk about it outside the organization unless we're actually talking directly with those insurers, and security can be a part of that. I have heard some folks really trying to turn this into a competitive pitch that we spend a lot on internal security so you don't have to worry about your data, and that's I think some pretty interesting ways to bring what you're doing in IT into the marketing speak. Not necessarily appropriate for every kind of business that there is, but certainly if you have HIPAA related stuff or PII or finance related stuff, that can absolutely be a part of the marketing speak to help customers feel comfortable about doing business with your organization, right? So that's one of the things that you guys can do. Assessments and penetration tests can provide support, and we've had a lot of interesting conversations around doing that. We've talked to some folks who really looked at getting a vulnerability assessment or a penetration test as potentially uncovering that they weren't doing all the right stuff, and that's, you could view it that way. I think some of the more forward-thinking folks look at it as support to back up what they've already been saying. So, see, I've had this external third party compile this report for me. This is showing you these are the areas where we're weak. This is why I've been recommending that we budget for these kinds of line items, and really using it as a backup and a support mechanism to show, look, we're doing everything we can with the tools that we have. I'm advocating for an additional tool set so that we can keep the lights on, keep the business running and moving forward, right? And then as far as the data cleanup, that discovery service, let's find that old data, let's get it eradicated so that we're saving money and time on our backups, and we're getting rid of stuff that can be used to compromise us but doesn't help the business really in any way.
Yep, totally. So Pete, we're right at the bottom of the hour. Maybe rip through this nice story and then we'll finish it up.
Yeah, so you know, the biggest challenge with the small market and the small mid, right, is a lot of the business leaders don't feel like they have any problems because they haven't seen companies like theirs on 60 Minutes or in the news, right? And here's a story of a company that you probably never heard of, right? They made software for wind turbines. Got compromised by the Chinese, who were then able to take their technology rather than doing their own R&D, bring it to market. They were able to be a lot cheaper because they didn't have all of that research, all of that pesky research to pay off, right? And it led to 2/3 of the staff to get laid off and really put these guys on the ropes, right? And a lot of this stuff now. I do see a note in here that this actually did make it to 60 Minutes, right? But not until the layoffs started happening. And so a lot of folks feel like I'm not seeing myself in the news, so I don't have anything to worry about, or nobody's after me, and it's far, far, far from the case, right? And so it's one of the things to think about. All right, sorry everybody, just so much to talk about on this topic, and really feel like we still didn't talk about nearly enough. Would love to engage with everybody. Love to tell you more about some of the ways that we're helping our clients and engaging with them, and you know, figure out how we can help you stay safe and get to the next level.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. And hey, thanks everybody for attending today. Like I said at the top of the broadcast, if you're interested in engaging with one of our security professionals, chat a little bit confidentially about what you have going on in your network, happy to do that. No obligation on your part. Give you a free hour of some super smart folks, and you may find that valuable. So. For now, though, since our time is up, I will wish you a happy and safe rest of your week. And thanks again for attending. I'm Todd Obert, along with Pete Greco from Productive, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.